I followed the rules, paid my dues, and crushed shit in corporate America. Then freedom became all that mattered. Hello, hello. Happy Friday, everyone, everywhere. I appreciate the heart of this community. You all have given incredible feedback about the way you resonate with stories shared, the way you're cheering the women on that come on the show. And I have to tell you, today is a special experience. I have the deep honor of welcoming Kathy Murray on the show. She's done so many things. She is so many things today. But notably, especially for this episode, she's the author of the Munich Cowboys Cheerleaders. I've had an incredible time listening to her audiobook and feeling all the feels, but I'm going to let her introduce herself. Kathy, please let everyone know who you are, where you come from, right? What your background is, and what led you to write this book.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. My name is Kathy Murray, and I was born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. And I kind of started traveling around at an early age through cheerleading. I attended the Ohio State University, so I traveled around there. I got to go to Hawaii, doing a cheerleading competition. From there, I won an national aerobic competition, which took me to Japan, which eventually took me overseas, and I ended up living there and working for 8 years. So I was in, like yourself, I was in corporate America. I was in medical sales and hated it, and got the job over in Europe, in Munich. They said, hey, can you come and be a freelance instructor? And I didn't know what I wanted to do, but that was something I loved teaching. And I went and just didn't look back and said, I'll figure it out later. And who knew, almost 30 years later, I would write a book. Also, to back up, I'm a personal trainer. I started in fitness after I moved to Germany. Started my business there called Fit Bodies, moved back to the United States in Atlanta. And who knew that I would be writing about my story in Munich, Germany, all these years later.
I just love it. And I think it speaks to the fact that, we continuously peel back the layers of our lives, right? The older we get, right? Like hindsight is truly 2020, right? So I think it's beautiful you were able to unpack that lens, right? As an older, more experienced, seasoned woman who could probably see more than you would have seen real time, right?
Oh, right? Definitely. I mean, when we started to co-write this, I have a client that is a New York bestseller, Martha Hall Kelly. She has Lilac Girls, a lot of historical fiction, Lost Roses, Sunflower Sisters. And over the 10 years, we were talking about obviously getting her stories made, but my story also. And when we started co-writing and got the okay from Amazon to do this novella, I really had to go back and think what it was like to just leave my corporate job. And my parents were looking at me like, are you crazy? Yep. You have this Fortune 500 job and what are you doing? So you don't know the language, you don't know anybody there. So it's definitely one of those things where you just have to jump, mm-hmm. So it's been quite the experience.
I can imagine. And speaking of your parents, one thing that stuck out to me at the onset of the book was, you were in the middle of this competition and you were going through all the feels you had, the nervousness, the pressure you felt, right, to do a great job. But you noted that your mom and father were there. And I was just like, wow, right? Today, I mentioned this to you before we came on air. I've been here a year and a half and family hasn't come to visit me yet, right? And I know they're gonna come. They're getting their passports together, but it's really an ordeal for them to muster up the whatever it is, right? Courage, reasoning, etc. to come. How did you get your parents there at the competition? were they living there too?
No, well, that because it was a very, very short story, there were some things that I had to use. Some things were composite characters. My parents didn't actually come over. That was just, we kind of added that to the story. But it was just like any parents. My mom was like, "Go for it." I'm not that crazy, but they know I'm very headstrong. And my dad was, he came from the school of, it doesn't matter if you like your job, it's a great job, you stay with it, you have all the perks, the stock options, and you're getting paid and benefits, a company car, and so you just suck it up and you just do it. So that's where my dad was coming, and my mom was like, well, let her go and she'll figure it out. So you had both sides,
Understood. And I was honestly going to ask you what tricks you use, because I'm like, she knows something I don't know. But love that.
Yeah, well, the good thing was that I had a job. I had a job. I was getting paid, and at that time, I think they gave me an apartment to live in.
That's great.
That was taken care of. So, just to kind of backpack and do the Eurail thing, it wasn't that. I was actually getting paid, and I had a place to live, but
secure.
Yes. So that did help, that I was making money.
Yeah,
I could support myself.
Yeah, love it. And you went from medical sales in Pittsburgh, right, to Munich. Completely different. How were those lifestyles, experiences different for you?
Medical sales. Medical sales, it was the perfect corporate job for me, because I knew from even when I was in college, I was not like a desk sitter.
Yeah.
I couldn't go into the office and sit at a desk.
Yeah.
I did an internship in the end of college, and it was just like, this is just not gonna work. So calling on different hospitals and being able to work, have my office at the house, that actually was great, because it got me around a lot of people. And then when I decided to go to Germany, no, I didn't know the language. I knew of some Americans that were there working, that brought me over to, they had a certification program for German. So I went over as a fitness instructor and as a former champion. So that I figured, hey, English is a universal language. And as you probably know from traveling the world like you do, when you live in a country, you have no choice.
Yes, ma'am.
If you want to communicate,
yes, ma'am.
you learn how to say hello, goodbye, thank you, how much is this, ordering food. You just find your way. And as you know now, it's so much easier because they have Google Translate. Back in the 90s, I had a little pocket dictionary that I would flip through and point and try. German isn't the easiest language, so trying to pronounce it. And I went to school, and I had a couple little tutors, and I went to their little schools, and I had really good friends, German friends that could speak English, that sat down and said, okay, here's how you order, here's what you say to the bank, here's what you say in a restaurant, and you just practice and practice. But every day you go out, you have to speak the language.
Of course.
So that was a little tough. And as you know, when you don't understand the language, it's very isolating. Very isolating. So I had my homesick days where I was just like, oh man, what have you done? Did you make the right choice?
And I think, which was not my case, I think it's awesome that you had community. Even if you all weren't very, very close, the fact that you could find tutors and have people you can ask questions of or to, role play with, I think that's so great, especially as a Black woman, where it's really hard to see yourself in your environment when you're offshore, right? I think, and now obviously I had to be resourceful when I came over. I was proactive in saying hello and being nice and cordial, and saying I'm an expat just in case somebody could point me to expat communities, and they did, right? But to anybody that's thinking about going offshore, especially with all the crazy that's going on in the States right now, not doing it on an island is so important. Like making sure you're open to help, right? And community, and saying, I don't know. It is okay. I think it's a part of freedom too. Like saying, I don't know. I need help. These are my gaps.
Exactly.
Can you step
Exactly.
in for me?
It was quite the it was a great learning experience, because sometimes when you went to go to the store, if they couldn't understand you, they were like, next.
Of course.
And you were just kind of sitting on the sideline going, okay, how can I get bread today? Yeah. So you learned to point a lot at the beginning, but yeah, it was interesting. As you know, in the book, I learned all the bad words first.
I mean, that's how it goes.
Yes, exactly.
I've been like that with Swahili too. Very nice. So I do want to kind of go into your experiences with race. Honestly, when you describe what you're experiencing, I didn't see a whole lot of difference from what we experience in the States, except that it's probably feels a little more unsafe because you can't speak the language or find help very quickly, right? But one line in the book stood out. A lot of lines, y'all, stood out, but one of them were, being Black in Germany is like living in a zoo, isn't it? Being Black in Germany is like living in a zoo, isn't it? Every moment on display. And you were having a conversation with somebody, right? And that was the colloquial line that came out. And I never thought about it like that, but I can relate, being watched and how articulate is she going to be, or can she navigate this, etc. You said Germans seem to look down on you. How was that experience being offshore? Did you use the same coping mechanisms that you'd used in the States with your previous supervisor, etc., or was it tougher for you experiencing microaggressions and racism offshore?
With the Germans, especially once I moved there and there weren't a lot of people of color, there were a couple of, you would see someone of color, like say you'd see a female or a young girl and you're like, oh great, but then you had to think about the military aspect. Soldiers would come over, have kids, and then they would leave, but then the German women would bring up the child. So those people that you're expecting, oh great, I can talk to them, didn't know any English.
Man.
Right. So that, and then the Africans were there. Of course, they would speak French, and it's like, no, I'm American, and they would speak the English. But yeah, you were constantly on display. You were constantly being stared at. We're taught it's rude to stare, and they would just stare, from your head to your toe and back up, and and you have to understand that it was not only racist, but also everyone doesn't like Americans.
That's right.
And you find that out
when you leave. I agree.
Yes, because some of my white friends would say, well, this happened to me. And I'm like, okay, so the anti-American thing was,
it's a real thing.
Was cross both.
That's right.
Right, exactly.
That's
right. And you know what? It's one of those things where I guess when I was going through it at the time, I just thought, okay, well, you choose to live here. Like when I tried to get my apartment, I had a roommate who was white, who was half German. She was a journalist there, so she would really help me when I first moved to Munich. And I had an experience where, this is before the internet, we would look in the paper, and she was trying to find me an apartment. She found me a sublet apartment for the musician. And she said, oh, okay, great. She would call, I was there. The apartment's free, come on over. It's available. And we go over there, and as soon as she would see me, she would say, I could hear him talking in German, and she would say, but we just called. And she was like, nope, it's not available. And then so then the second, we do it again. The second one, we go, great, we're on our way over. We go over, and then we get there, and I hear him talking in German, but you know enough where she's saying,
of course,
no, it's not, it's for her. So by the time the third one came around, my roommate, and her name was Gretel, She said, I just don't get it. And I just started, I was like, really?
Come on now.
It's obvious that
right.
when I show up,
that's the problem all of a sudden.
Right. And so she was like, what? So just that kind of thing was like, wow, okay, I need to get an apartment. How am I going to get one when I show up? And they have all these stereotypes.
That's right.
Regarding, so those things were just, and I eventually luckily had a student that was an attorney that fronted for me and went and helped me get an apartment.
Wow.
So those types of things happened like every day, there. But, with my will and determination and faith, I just said, okay.
Yeah, I mean, because at least today, and not to mitigate what we go through today, right? But today we can quickly get a protest started, recording something, sharing it again, like, a GoFundMe,
Right.
But I can't even
yell for bad,
like, what are you going to do back then, right? Like, write to the newspaper to do a publication, thank you for helping to pave a way. It is still crazy out here, but I'm happy to see the other side of that story is you living a beautiful life. You having all of these experiences, etc. And another thing, I love how you described your passion in cheering, right? You even said, you felt at home when you were cheering, right? And I thought about, why Africa felt good for me, or, and going deeper, and, I felt safe. Like I felt home. It felt like Big Mama's house, right? And immersing myself in home, is my choice now that I have agency as an adult and know I have options. What made you fall in love with cheering, especially post, grade school, post college? What was it about cheering that was such a joy for you?
I think I have always, even from the time I can remember, I was always motivating people and pumping people up. I think that's why I love being a trainer.
Yep.
That's why I love, being down there on the field or on a basketball court and motivating the crowd and leading them in cheers and cheering them on to, for the team. I've always loved that. And it was just, hard work, because once I got to college, that was a whole nother level of cheering. And so that was so great to take these girls who knew nothing. It's kind of like the Bad News Bears met cheerleading. they didn't know how to stunt. When one of the manager had heard that I was a cheerleader and couldn't speak any English, had someone translate and said, hey, I heard you were a champion. You were from Ohio, when you went to school, and you were a champion. And so would you mind coming and looking at the girls? And I remember looking at them, going to their practice and thinking, oh my gosh. But I mean, it was invented in America, and they were trying to do the best they could. And they were cheering for American football, which they had to cheer in English.
Wow.
And they were young. They were like 15 through maybe 18, 19, 20, because they didn't have a school affiliation. And I thought, okay, this is going to be a challenge with them not knowing anything and having to go from the ground up, showing them what to do, and the language barrier.
Right.
I mean, I eventually became fluent, but at the time I was like, okay, there were a couple girls, because they had to speak English. They had to take English in school. Okay. So the older girls could speak English and would translate, but it was a back and forth with them being hungry to learn about cheerleading, but then me to teach them not only the stunts and the technique, but also this is what it takes. Right. It takes practice. Right. It takes determination. Right. It takes teamwork. So teaching all of those things that you have to have for not only cheerleading, but what's been great about reconnecting with them for the book is they're mothers and older women with children, and they're like, when you told us about teamwork and hard work, and you got to keep practicing. I tell my child that
So
now,
beautiful, Kay.
you know, or this is what I do to my team and my business. So that really warmed my heart to see that they, it had effect on them all these years.
I'm sure. And, you know, I haven't known of you for a very long time, but I mean, that was a thematic presence for me throughout your story. Like, despite the sneers, despite pushback, despite challenges, despite hurdles, right? You just kept showing up anyway. You kept showing up anyway. And how can you not leave a lasting impression on those women, you know, who are now women today? I think that's just beyond beautiful. I think it's a testament to your legacy, honestly. So I'm happy you wrote this story. So talking about where you are today, right? What is life like for Kathy today?
It is very, it's humbling. I really, so many people have reached out to me to say they really enjoyed my story. People that have known me for years said, I had no idea that you went through what you went through. And it's really, you know, people tell me it's really motivated them to, you know, no matter, you know, with all this adversity and things that are thrown in your way, you know, you worked it out. And I think that I've always been like that. Again, you know, someone told me, no, you can't do it, or whether it was cheerleading or something, I would just go and work harder at it, you know, and just say, kind of like, watch me, or bring it, you know, I'm gonna, you know, try my best. So it's been great. My clients have been great with their support. You know, the former cheerleaders, and of course I can't thank, you know, my co-author has definitely gave me a crash course in into writing, and I've given her a crash course on cheerleading.
Yeah, clearly.
She knows nothing about that, so we had to, I was showing, you know, YouTube videos, this is a stunt and this is it. But she's such a brilliant writer. And I was telling her, I wish I would have paid more attention in writer's comp class in high school, because you never know later in life, you know, when you're gonna you have to go back and use that. So she's been a great, you know, mentor just to help me with, you know, writing and description and how to, you know, making things come off the page and let people feel. So she's been great with that. So it's just been a blessing, and it's just been really, really fun, and you know, has me thinking about my next book.
I'm sure. So, you should keep writing. The texture, the way you paint pictures and emote, I mean, it's just brilliant. You should definitely keep writing. You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And you know, we talked some about this before you came on, but you know, your story is not over, obviously, and it's just never too late to continue stepping into freedom. You know, what is the next step for you in living the life that you desire?
Wow. I think, you know, at this point, I know my calling is, you know, motivating and teaching and mentoring, you know, not only, especially women of color. I'm a triathlete, and I've been in the sport when I was the only one out there. And I started, I'm always in mentoring the group. I strength trained for a group called the Atlanta Tri-Sisters, and one of the ladies was like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for the time. We went out on the bike last weekend. I'm like, when I was doing this, I was the only one out there, and there wasn't Atlanta Tri-Sisters. There wasn't Black Triathletes Association. There wasn't Black Girls Run, Black Men Run. There was none of that. And so if I can pull up my sisters and brothers to say, hey, I know what it feels like to try to swim in open water and be terrified. and
right.
overcoming that fear because I was there once,
right.
and someone helped me, but now I'm here to help you. And then as we spoke before we came on, we also, want to retire to the motherland, and we're also looking for this next step in our journey where, we're retiring. It's like, when you get to a certain age, you're like, what does retirement look like?
Yeah.
And I think that is being in the place that you want to be.
That's right.
And the surrounding yourself with people, and I love the ocean, and I'm really happy that I have a spouse that loves the ocean as much as I do. And him being in the military, he's a veteran, he's not afraid to go anywhere. And by me being in Europe, I wasn't afraid to go anywhere. I could go to Italy on the train, and Austria,
right.
and
right.
Slovenia, and all these countries where you just make it happen.
Yep.
You just become really resilient, I think, when you live abroad. And I know that's what that taught me. So when he said, let's do it, I'm like, yeah, let's do it.
I'm so excited for you. I mean that, when I think on my big mama, my great grandmother, and I still have very vivid memories of her, right? We have pushed the envelope so far, right? As Black women, we get to experience so much more than she ever could. I mean, because when my great grandma was alive, you talking about can't even open a checking account if she wanted to, right? I mean, property, we have, I think, continued to challenge the limits of what women can do, Black women especially, and for you to talk about, when I retire in this lifetime, I choose to be in the motherland. I just love that. That's how it should be. Us inching farther and farther in freedom and independence, and us choosing what our lives look like. I applaud you so much. This time always goes by so quickly. So
I know, and before we finish, I want to applaud you, because I told you before we got on, we were meant to meet and connect, because you are there, you're doing it, and it's just been a kind of a thought in my mind. And then when I met, went on your website and looked and listened to your podcast, I was like, oh my gosh, you're paving the way for people like myself and sisters like myself, because you're doing it, that you're there, you're living it. And that inspires me to know, hey, she's doing it, I know I can do it.
Absolutely. And that's without a amen choir, right? Because a lot of people feel like, girl, you making all of this money in banking, and it's just like if I can be 10 times as good on my worst day, right, as peers who don't look like me, surely I can go out into the world and leverage my own skills, my own talents. Why does it have to be under the name and brand of someone else,
and so many people are making money.
You hear me?
And they have all the things.
You hear me?
But they're unhappy.
Yeah, of course.
So I commend you, and I've been there too, where it's just like, I enjoy what I do, and I'm blessed to touch people's lives and to motivate them, and that's what drives me, and that's what makes living worth it,
Ashe. Phil, I'm just so happy to know you. Well, please tell everybody, Kathy, where they can find your book, and anything else you want them to know about.
Okay, my book is called The Munich Cowboy Cheerleaders. It's on Audible. So you can find it there. My website is fit, FIT-bodies, BODIES.net. And you can find me on all my social media platforms, or on my website.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing space. You have inspired, and
inviting me.
You gotta keep me posted on how this retirement move goes.
I will. Definitely. We're in the process. It's not happening, as you know, it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it does not.
Very happy for the journey.
Well, beautiful. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Definitely follow, subscribe, do all the things. Buy the book and buy it for your friends and your mom. We both would definitely appreciate that. Everyone have a good one. Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Blaze Business Intensive is the 6-week business management course for Black women. Enroll today by going to blazebusinessintensive.com.